So very good. So shall we begin, John? Is it okay?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Oh, okay, fantastic, fantastic. Okay, good. So very good afternoon, everyone. So very glad to be here. I'm Dr. K. Ganesh from McKinsey. Welcome all of you for this great conference. I think in the COVID, everything is digital today. So again, digital conference on digital supply chain 2021. It's a very great topic, by the way, and it's with the overall sub theme of how to win the strategy, right? Winning strategies for sustainable future. So that's a fantastic theme actually there on the table for from CII for a digital supply chain. So thanks to CII for bringing this particular platform with a lot of experts on the table, right? We are in third session today. That is glad to deep dive into one of the subtopic. Very
Ganesh?
I think we lost him.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get him back, and we'll just give him a minute to be on. I think these are the hazards of working from home, the pandemic situation. So if this can happen to us, just imagine how it can happen to a supply chain which needs to run every minute.
Right.
Okay, Shubhradeep, while you're on, welcome. We just got started, and Dr. Ganesh is having a few internet issues. Once he's back, we'll get started. Hello, can you hear me?
We are not able to hear you, Shubhradeep.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Meanwhile, our technical team is checking with Dr. Ganesh. So maybe just give us a 2 minutes time, and then we'll start.
Sure.
Yeah, Ganesh, we are not able to hear you.
Okay, John back. Okay, sure. Thanks. Sorry, it says I've been kicked out. I don't know why. I'm really sorry. Okay. Sorry for that. Hope everything is fine, right? I'm audible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry for the glitch. Really sorry, panelists and the participants. Sorry for the glitch. Anyway, the moment I said the new age digital network, I think there's a technology glitch has happened. So, welcome everyone. So we are in the third topic for the day, which is new age global digital supply chain network. It's a very important topic to proceed. Thanks to CII to bring this subtopic in the third session, right? And the main important sub-theme of this particular session is how the modular supply chain with integrated digital supply chain network is evolving as a paradox, especially in the post-COVID environment, right? So mainly from the government, shipper, as well logistics service provider point of view, how we are actually embarking a intelligent supply chain. That's where I think, so we talked about earlier how the supply chain to be responsive. Later we talked about the agile supply chain, right? Only responsive is not enough. We need to have a very, very agile inbound supply chain. So that is where one of the game. Now from the agile, people actually talked about reimagination of supply chain. From reimagination, now the fourth journey is evolved, which is intelligent supply chain, because it is about with the partners and with the complete, the network partners, right? So that's where this particular session is going to talk about how the digital as well the advanced analytics going to enable the intelligent supply chain network along with the partners. So that is the overall crux of this particular discussion. So without wasting time, I'll introduce our four panelists, eminent panelists for this particular session. We have Mr. Adi Balakrishnan, Mr. Shubhradeep, Captain Jatin, as well Mr. Dinesh. I'll just go and introduce them very quickly. Mr. Adi Balakrishnan, Vice President, Ford Motor Private Limited. So he's actually specialized in material planning and logistics department at Ford, working in Chennai, Tamil Nadu. He completed his PhD doctorate degree in the management studies under SRM University, and he's almost having 23 years of experience in supply chain, focusing digital, worked across multiple regions, China and India as well. And also, apart from this, is having a great academic crave of publishing research papers in the areas of logistics, material flow, and engineering changes, right? So in various international journals. Mr. Adi, welcome to this particular panel. It's going to be a great interaction with you in the next 1 hour, 15 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Ganesh.
Thanks, Adi. And we have Mr. Shubhradeep Guha, who is the Director of Media Services, Google. Very glad to have you, sir. So he's actually lead a large global professional services function that delivers a transformation of a digital marketing solution, right? So for the largest customers of Google. And he leads the optimization, analysis, and measurement specialisms, which actually helps the customers bridge the gap between the investment as well the business results. So ultimately, today everyone actually talk about digital investments. I think Mr. Shubhradeep is actually one which doing this on day in day out. We probably can get a lot of insights from him. Prior to Google, he held a variety of leadership positions with Publicis Sapient in Europe and in India as well, and set up global businesses and practices for multiple divisions. Mr. Shubhradeep, welcome to this panel. It's going to be a great interaction with you.
Thank you, Dr. Ganesh.
Thanks a lot. And we have a third panelist who is actually Captain Jatin Sharma, who's a Head Strategy Development at Etios Growth Partners. So he's, I think, is very come with a very specialized skill. He's a logistics professional trained in the Indian Army. So we always say, right, in the research, we always say, most of the logistic research starts from Army. I think any pilot, anywhere, I think starts from Army. I think I remember the convoy routing, which I worked 15 years back, which is we're talking about the dynamic routing and so on and so forth. In Army, I think the convoy routing, we don't know anything, right? It's almost a dark path. You have to find the routing. And we have Mr. Captain Jatin Sharma. He's actually inimitable experience of being an officer of the Indian Army at Mahindra Logistics and MJ Logistics, and also founder of the firm in the business of people logistics. So he's having a varied of industry experience. He's having handled profiles in operations and sales, and also manage execution as an entrepreneur. He holds a holistic perspective towards the growth and maturity of the overall logistics sector in India. I think we'll have a lot of questions for you in terms of logistics setup, because its overall supply chain network is mainly for a physical flow, right? Beyond a material and other flow. And his passion is to serve the nation, and completed his training at the Officers Training Academy in 2005. During his stint, he learned the nuances of logistics and executed some of the complex assignments in precarious conditions to ensure seamless conduct of operations. Captain Jatin, very glad to have you in the panel. Welcome, sir.
It's my privilege. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. Yeah, we have the last eminent the panelist, or I would say speaker, Mr. Dinesh PA, who is a director of supply chain technology from Kimberly-Clark. He's a technology director for Kimberly-Clark, where he's actually responsible for the global supply chain technology, and he's actually leading teams, global teams for multiple Fortune 100 companies like Walmart, Dell, Cisco. I think fantastic varied experience across variety of industry. I would see electronics, retail. I think variety of industry. I think come with a large experience, especially in the digital transformation journey. I think that's very important to mention. And having a vast experience in e-commerce today, reimagination of supply chain or intelligent supply chain will not be complete if we don't talk about the omni-channel and e-commerce. I think he's having a vast experience in e-commerce, driving innovation through technology, right? So we have a fantastic 4 eminent panelists today to kind of share their views, how this digital supply chain network is evolving, and how the intelligent supply chain is kind of evolving from their viewpoint. So that's a fantastic discussion we're going to have today. Thanks everyone. Before I begin the questions to the panelists, I'll probably take a minute to kind of share one thought process from McKinsey. Right? I'll probably share one slide. I thought not to present earlier, but this one slide is actually very, very important in the current context. I'll probably share my screen. One second. Hope my screen is visible now. Yeah, okay. Hope my screen is visible now. Yeah, the digital supply chain network.
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic. So I thought to share this one or two particular slide, right? So we're talking about the digital supply chain network, right? This is very important. So this is actually the recent survey from McKinsey, right? We want to kind of give you the real digital journey which is happening. How the COVID accelerated the complete shift towards a digital, across multiple areas in supply chain, across all industries. How the adoption of digital happens per industry, right? So what you see is the dark blue and then the light blue, right? The dark blue, the before COVID, the digital, I would actually say the percentage of digital accesses by industry. I mean, it is actually across multiple domains in the entire value chain. If you see from banking, insurance, grocery, apparel, till the last public sector, right? Entertainment, social media, travel, telecommunication, utilities, and public sector. If you see these sector, right? In all this sector, before COVID, if you see the ranges like between 20 to 57, that took almost like 5 to 8 years to reach this particular percentage, the adoption of digital access. But look at the blue, the light blue one, which is in the top, right? That happened over a year. Massive adoption across multiple industries, right? I didn't put manufacturing specifically here. The reason being the adoption is actually still in a nascent stage, even post-COVID, but the remaining all other industry. We have a lot of other industries also here today. But travel, logistics is one of the important, right? So I didn't talk about the industry 4.0 manufacturing, that I put it aside. But if you look at the entire sector, even including logistics, travel, social media, apparel, which is very critical, right? So the adoption of the digital in the last 1 year is massive. Okay, that shows the power of digital. People actually trying to adopt into the setup, and I definitely understand there are a lot of challenges today, which you're going to get a lot of suggestions from our panelists for sure, right? No clear why there is aspiration. What would be the transformation story? I should have it on the table to do the digital transformation in my entire network. What is the impact focus? Where should I impact the come? And what is this I mean, what is the current lack of, the focus which is happening in my company? That is also a big challenge for most of the company. And a lot of companies are silos in terms of the supplier and in terms of the third-party logistics service provider, right? So a lot of talent scarcity as well. And there are priorities for leadership whether to go for a technology, a digital advanced analytics or not. There is also another challenge, and transformation centered on technology, not on a business. So these are some of the few challenges which is there on the table. Even though there is adoption which is increased to the greater extent, we will definitely understand from our panelists today how do we overcome these challenges, what they have seen in their viewpoint in the last 1 year. So those are the things we actually understand from them. With this, I probably stop my discussion. Just go back 1 second. Okay, so very good. So that's it from my side. I think I want to set the fire and, and not giving any solutions. Rather, this is improving. Companies are doing today, and the adoption is actually increased a lot. And on the other side, there is a big challenge which is also happening for multiple companies. So I'll probably set the ground, open the ground with the challenges. I'll move to the panels, right? So what I will do is the below. While I'm asking questions, my request to the participants, I don't know whether this platform there are two platforms. We have another platform. We are on a different platform. I think you can ask questions over the chat, right? So I believe Riaz and John, the chat is connected. Whatever the chat questions they're putting in the chat is going to come to us. So you can use the chat platform to put your questions. So parallelly, we will collate those questions, combine the questions in a proper sequence, and we'll try to keep 15 minutes in the end so that we'll have a very, very good discussion on those Q&A as well. So start putting your questions now itself. That'll be great, right? So with that, without wasting any minute, I'll just move to the panelist discussion. So I probably go with Mr. Adi, right? Adi Balakrishnan. So I'll start with you, right? I think come from a Ford Auto, a lot of implementation of digital. What I've seen myself is actually one of the forefronter is like after the e-commerce and after the retail consumer, the AI part, the auto is one of the forefronter, right? So they come in the forefront to kind of bring the digital setup, right? I want to kind of understand from you, what was your complex challenge in the last 1 year, right? What you're faced in your company and in your industry, how you kind of overcome that through collaborative network, through a digital setup. There may be multiple other reasons, right? So would love to kind of hear from you. How was the journey the last 1 year, and what was the learning, and what was the areas you are focused with? Let me pause and over to Mr. Bala.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Ganesh, and good afternoon. So hope all of you can hear me well, okay? Okay, good. Okay, so see, basically the nature of auto industry that all of you know very well, that it's heavily dependent on the global supply chain. And what happened exactly when the COVID hit us? The demand and also the supply and the workforce availability was a challenge across the globe. Okay, and we all know that the lockdown, quarantine mandates issued by the government, and our supply base is in different country, and we need to start getting the supplies, all were halted. If I recall, though India affected in March, I mean this week, 1 year ago, China was affected even in January. So January last week, we started having issues, and we started arranging our team in Ford, that a global cross-functional team, to start focusing how the China supplies is going to impact their domestic production as well as the export, because most of the commodities that we all know, it's coming from China. And we knew at that point in time, it is really is a hit. And in terms of the production stall and the plant shutdowns in China, all that kind of resulted clearly that it is going to be a big bang in terms of pandemic outcome. So one of the major challenge I see here is the lack of supply chain visibility. Okay, when I say lack of supply chain visibility, we know, like take an Indian plant, we deal with the India supplier, so that they are the local supplier for us. but when you go down, that supplier may be getting an imported source, and that supplier, the entire supply chain, the visibility was lagging. So we were able to understand, okay, tier 1 and up to the max tier 2, nothing beyond that. So then that resulted one of the major concern in terms of decision making. When I say decision making, we want to rebound. When the situation started slowly improving in June, July, how to rebound and how to get those supplies back. That was one of the challenge. That is from the supply side. The other challenge is the uncertainty in demand. Okay. The demand, I know at that point in time, whether it will be a V shape, U shape, K shape, there are multiple shapes we were talking in the market. So how the demand is going to recover, and do we have a right predictive approach, predictive solution or data availability? Because this is first time we are all seeing, and we don't know where to predict, what to put as a forecast, because all those supplies, what was shipped, it is lying in our store. We already paid the money, the working capital is locked. So all sort of challenge. So basically the uncertainty of demand was the second important issue. And since the production started halting, and I know the customer stopped going to the stores to buy the vehicle. I know some markets like, and some companies like Tesla, they started having the online sales and online channel, where we see some good improvement. So that's where we started seeing the digital involvement, right? Already started seeing how it is going to support in these terms of benefit. So that's the second challenge, uncertainty of demand. The third is it is also impacted all our non-production related initiatives, like projects, like our new model launches. Like, so you want to bring the facilities to be moved, and you need to start establishing the movements of toolings from one country to another country. So all was standstill. So which delayed, all our launches got delayed, and the projects got very much impacted. And more important is on the people. The people aspect of it. I think this is the new culture. So if you know, in the plant situation, people work in the plant, they touch and feel, and they see things. And we have team a non-place dependent. They can work from anywhere, and those members were okay. We started moving and to the work from home, which is again new. We never gone through that acid dip, I can say, acid test, to go and work from home, sit in front of computer and start doing. So I can immediately think of Dr. Ganesh, these are all the challenges for last 1 year. I know during COVID, and even we still have some other supply chain challenges that we are going through, but I can think of these are all comes to my mind immediately: your supply, your demand, your work availability, and also all the projects. So that's the key challenge that what Ford has undergone.
No, thanks, Bala. I think that's really helpful, right? I think to kickstart the discussion, I mean, you kind of really explain what was the journey and what are the things you have actually done. That's great. Very great to hear. I'm going to switch here to Mr. Subhradeep, right? So I think moving from auto to a media service, want to hear from you, right? Especially, my question is, you definitely have a partner network ecosystem. I mean, you have a huge partner system. I mean, you were talking about the network, the supply chain network, right? So, I mean, in terms of the journey, people say, now they return and they reimagine it, and they have to do an intelligent network, right? That's what we are talking about, a journey now. So, my question to you, from your context, what are the different strategies and what are the different methodologies you adopted, especially for the return? And are you thinking something differently today in the reimagination part? And are you actually also driving towards the intelligent network, right? So what are the strategies and methodologies you adopted, especially on this particular reimagination journey? So that'd be helpful, Mr. Subhradeep, to hear from you.
Sure, absolutely. Great question, Dr. Ganesh. I think you're covering a pretty large scope there. Let me try and give you some examples across industries also. But let's step back from picking up from what Adi said just now. If you look at it, it's an inflection point that we are going through now. Now, absolutely not foreseen, but there are many basic business truths, which are probably getting questioned at this point in time. And one of those is, what are you solving for? What does the supply chain get designed to solve for? And all of a sudden, that itself got taken away. We were solving for efficiency, agility, arguably, cost, speed, all of those. And all of a sudden, many of the basics have suddenly been taken away. And it is not that it was a switch which was switched off and you can now switch it on and everything will be normal. You're looking at a very, very different world where you need to now suddenly solve it in a multivariate setup. I think that's a critical element. So, there is supply shock. So that's one example where we are saying, your supply entirely or part of your supply is stalled. Now that itself probably is a very good conversation there. Now industries like cars, for example, or even high tech are hugely impacted because, what probably was a source of competitive advantage have suddenly become a source of competitive disadvantage. There are like literally 3 providers of high-tech semiconductor equipment worldwide. So they are all kind of geographically located in one specific area. So if they affect you, they affect all of you. And so all of a sudden, that is affecting entire industries. And you may have figured out many different things, but since we started off with automobiles, as in the auto industry itself is facing a shortage of chipsets at this point in time, and which is threatening in a big way in their earnings and everything. So here's an industry, wasn't in difficulties, just started recovering. And the new issue which they are now faced with is this. And you wouldn't have associated a chipset shortage with an auto industry impact. And this is the challenge we face in how interconnected the supply chains are. Now, how do you solve for it? And it's a tricky one because I don't think our business plan typically was wondering about this level of geopolitical risk management at that particular level, and which has now suddenly come to the fore. Now, this is one example of supply shock, but again, look at it. Take a take a cheaper example from a consumer perspective. You want to buy a pair of jeans or a shirt or something, an apparel. Sharp trends in user buying pattern, and which is suddenly forcing an entire sets of organizations, entire categories, to drop building a particular set of products and focus on one. Shoes suddenly are saw this huge demand in running shoes and trainers. So you stop pretty much everything else, and all production lines then get kind of diverted onto this one within a threatened environment. And which is, again, I don't know whether that level of stress testing was ever thought about. And if anything, the historical wisdom has been around diversification of the production lines, and not one of what happens if all of them have to be shut down and one needs to be run. And then the slide you showed right in the beginning, I think the joke we have all used is typically transformation needs the support of the C-suite. The latest addition to the C-suite is C for COVID. Probably has driven far more digital transformation than any CXO would have ever imagined at this point in time. So and that I think has been very interesting because not all of them were prepared for it. And this is not just brick and mortar. Even if you are in you have to suddenly ramp up on e-commerce, you wouldn't have had to figure out curbside pickup till COVID hit. So now all of a sudden you are having to figure out curbside pickup. And there are cases, there is a large retailer who figured it out in 2 days flat, but their own plan was 18 months long, back in the day. And so there's hope in the sense that, you can, bring that about. So what are the things which are working? A couple of things are, there is a definite focus now on diversifying the supply base. And diversify words, I would probably peel like level after level. As in, one is obviously automatically, you want to diversify the suppliers and the geographies and so on. But also, what are the specific decisions you're taking? Which of those should you insource? Now, the challenge, though, your end consumer is not really to spend any more money, though. They still want the car at a similar price or cheaper. They still want their shirt at a similar price or cheaper. And they're not willing to pay more. So that's a challenge on businesses and how you stay true to that and suddenly solve for these. And some of these are risk scenarios. When you say the multi-sourcing model or a China plus one, which we have seen in the light of the trade war between US and China, all of those are very specific examples where you're solving. But it's a risk. There is no clear economic upside or downside which we are tying in there. So where do you end, and what's the use case of diversification? How much is the CFO willing to bankroll? That the cost of diversification of your supply base is probably a question which is facing us now and will face us. The other one, again, related to that is, so another way to solve it is you'll hold some inventory. Well, that costs money. Or you hold stock, you risk obsolescence. So how do you deal with that? And what again is and conventional wisdom no longer will play, right? As in, none of us ever predicted COVID. So all of a sudden, how do you think of it, and how do you think of that particular paradigm? And there are, examples like, you would say there are new age, digital supply chain networks and so on. And we have talked about Internet of Things and all of that. Process innovations do have a play in this in a very big way. So whether you talk about continuous flow manufacturing, for example, in manufacturing areas, or the power of 3D printing and everything else, the reality, I think, is more in the business domain than necessarily in the supply chain domain immediately, because it's both. So you actually have to have I don't think it's the head of supply chain figuring it out anymore. It's a conversation you have to negotiate with your CFO and the CEO and see which one do you want to prioritize. You want to go back and tell your shareholders in the quarterly call that, well, we will have to take a hit for the next 3 quarters because we will invest in de-risking, for which you don't have a direct tie into the bottom line at all. And so how does the C-suite deal with that? I think those are challenges which we are definitely looking at. So my sense is you're looking at demand shock, you're looking at supply shock, you're also looking at this forced movement. Some of the examples I was sharing of players having to go on to digitization, the slide you shared, Dr. Ganesh. And the combination of all of these are, I think, teeing up very interesting academically, but very painful if you're in the mix. And all of us are kind of in the mix. So we are kind of having to live the life of being able to make those decisions. And there are opportunities around different industries of what we can learn. There are a lot more similarities which are emerging at this point in time of what can be done. Pharmaceutical itself is a highly sensitive industry, very prone to supply chain issues in terms of all the APIs and everything which need to be kind of moved around. Now there are, I think wholesale changes which are required in the current context as vaccines get developed and everything else. So there are, some signs, and we should obviously talk about it. Not all doom and gloom. I think there are, many good, examples of things happening there, which we should also talk about through the panel.
No, thanks, Pradeep. I think that was fantastic. I think some of the elements are very very clear, right? I know it's a journey, and there's no 3 things to say. If I think I have 3 things will move away. I think it's not a case. It actually depends upon the and you also correctly mentioned it. Selectively modernize the technology, selectively modernize the digital, right? So see the relevance, see the appropriateness, and then decide it, right? It is not that I have to do an end-to-end digital transformation that may not actually work out for all the companies. That's very well said. Thanks, Pradeep. I'll probably come back to you later to kind of touch base some other questions. I'll move to Captain Jatin, right? Jatin, I was actually, I was browsing what is, I don't know, I'm pronouncing right, Atos, right? Atos Growth Partners.
Atos Growth Partners.
I understand Atos in Greek is eagle.
Correct.
And your company is kind of, bring the characteristics of the eagle and then serve the client. I think that's a very, I was noting down myself. It was what was mentioned is it's nurturing, it's fearless, it's tenacious. I think it's very good to hear, right? Because my question is also on a similar trend, especially the risk and uncertainty, right? That is one of the important elements, right? So what you have seen in your client situations, what are the different risks and uncertainty your client faced, and what are the top 3 things you at least have seen people adopted to kind of overcome that? Because I know this is like so we haven't had 5 times before this COVID. This is a new one. Everyone is actually facing this particular pandemic first time, and it's a very unique, right? What risk and uncertainty you have seen in your clients, and what you suggested, and what you have seen, how they managed it? Because this is actually complete network ecosystem, right? As we were discussing, would love to kind of understand from you the 3 important things. What are the risk and uncertainty, and what are the 3 things which actually helps to overcome that? That would be helpful to know from you, Captain.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ganesh. Firstly, I would like to thank you and CII for giving us this opportunity. I'll also take a brief 15 seconds to explain what ATUS does, because I think the other names are, well popular and everybody understands what those organizations do. Well, as you said, we spent a lot of time trying to decide what we're going to call this organization, because we are a team of professionals who've over the years spent a lot of time serving large corporations. I myself have served the Indian Army. That's exactly where I learned the nuances of logistics. But post that, in my stints in corporate India, I've had the opportunity of running a distribution center for Bharti Walmart. The organization that I used to work for would manage logistics for Tata Motors, Bosch, Philips, Nestle. I used to personally run a 3,000 metric ton storage, cold storage, which was completely palletized and was run on a warehouse management system. So, and my co-founder and the founding team, we've had about multiple decades of experience of having served these customers. Now, what are we trying to do now? What we're trying to do now is that we are trying to put that execution experience into a knowledge base and trying to solve some problems for emerging enterprises. And when I say emerging enterprises, we don't just mean organizations which have a lower top line, but any kind of organization, even a legacy large conglomerate who's looking to improve their supply chain function and bring in digitization, best practices, standard operating procedures. That's exactly what we are trying to do at ATUS. So I thought I should, give a background before I get on to address the question that you have shared. Dr. Ganesh, I think the best way to answer this would be to put in perspective what our clients are doing. And when we look at clients at ATUS, we could put them in three buckets. One is a very large FMCG conglomerate where we are doing, there is where we do a little bit of execution of operations, where we are running a warehouse. We are doing secondary transportation for them. We are doing complete inventory management and all the activities that are included in secondary transportation, which would mean multi-point deliveries, which would mean serving customers, which would mean managing their complete reverse logistics. So we do that for one section of our customers. For another section is a manufacturing organization which has plants across locations in India, spread across 4 locations in India. And there we are doing some consulting work where we are bringing in advanced storage infrastructure. We are bringing in advanced information technology systems and trying to take their supply chain to the next level. And then there is another section of our customers which are into trading. Now, this bucket is not actually into manufacturing, but is into trading. Now, all these three organizations have faced different sets of uncertainties and risks. So when we talk about risks, I think what is common to all these three buckets is the supplier inconsistency. Now, in the case of, let's say, an FMCG where they're doing their manufacturing themselves, the challenge has not been as severe as it would be in the case of a manufacturing setup. We know for sure that our customers have come back to us, and I think this is where we've already discussed a little bit about diversification of our supplier base. So they've come back to us and they've asked for ideas as to how do they manage this risk of a disruption in supply when they're dependent on a single supplier system. So that is the supplier inconsistency, I think, is common to all the buckets, especially in the case of the trading customer also. So their materials are coming in from an OEM. Now that OEM, because of disruption in their supply chains, have not been able to probably deliver the fast moving products which are in high demand. And there has been a lot of variance in the kind of product that they're also trying to push, because now their lines are also being planned on the basis of availability to their raw materials from their suppliers. So it has a spiraling effect on the trading agency as well. Very interesting time that we saw. So supplier inconsistency is one. I think second risk that we've seen is of inventory levels. That's, and obviously, as we would all appreciate, an FMCG organization, I mean, they're very critical, very, very careful about the kind of inventory they're holding. And the one that I would like to talk about here is the safety stock. This Black Swan event has actually completely thrown that aspect in a tizzy, because look, as far as your cycle stock is concerned, you still have decent forecasts on your demand. But whenever you're doing your safety stock planning, you're always trying to be a little optimistic about a Black Swan event or something happening, and you're always hoping against hope that it wouldn't happen. So I think this is something very important, and this we saw common to manufacturing, common to FMCG, and to trading. So trading, especially because they're always running after high margin, high demand items, and those are the ones which are kept in low quantities in their safety stock because they know that they're moving really fast. But that kind of through that planning in Array, because they suddenly had no stock left of fast moving material, that led to a very interesting development which I'll cover later. um, uh, the third thing which is common to these three buckets is multiple logistics service providers. And I think that's also in line with the topic that we are discussing today. That what is happening is a smaller organization or large. Today, the way Indian logistics works is that we are dependent on our warehousing for somebody else. We are dependent on another service partner for transportation. We'd probably be depending on someone else who does only partial loads. There's an agency that would do only full truck loads. So that kind of spreads out the whole system. And the challenge here is also that when we are trying to rationalize costs, it's very difficult for us to depend on one customer for all the whole gamut of services, because their specialization also in that particular service might be limited. So it's an ecosystem issue. It's an ecosystem issue, but I believe in this discussion that will come up, and that could be one of a very critical aspect of being able to develop intelligent supply chains. And the fourth thing that again was common to all these four buckets was meeting committed SLAs. Now, an FMCG company, well, may or may not be in a D2C business scenario, but even in a B2B business scenario, the demand challenges that were seen in terms of the requirement of modern trade, the demand variance seen in terms of requirement of the typical conventional distributor network was immense. And how would they align with those changes in demand? There was a time when the shops weren't open, the local mom and pop stores weren't open, and there was a time when the key account stores were actually fulfilling most of the demand. So that became a very serious challenge in terms of meeting committed SLAs. That was also the case with our manufacturing client. One is that there is local demand, and then there is external demand, which is out of the country. So because of lockdowns and all that, obviously those orders got delayed. They were not making those deliveries. All the countries were in a lockdown. But the domestic demand, because manufacturing slowly opened up within a month, month and a half, 2 months of lockdown, and it was seen that they were able to achieve pre-pandemic monthly run rate of their revenue within 2 months of the lockdown. And this they were able to achieve through an enhanced demand from the domestic customers. So then, there was a challenge, and they probably not having focused so much on domestic customer SLAs, because in a B2B setup where they're in a chemical industry, a day or two difference in TAT will not make so much of a difference. But now, because the focus was completely on satisfying domestic demand, the focus on having a very effective TAT also came out. So these four risks, Dr. Ganesh, I think are the ones that have been observed. Now, coming to the second part of your question, what are the three top things that these people have done, that our clients have done, and we've also recommended? I think first and foremost is that we've gone back to collaborative planning. There was a time when we used to talk a lot about CPFR, and I think this event has taken us back to collaborative planning. This has been for the first time we've seen that a large FMCG customer is ready to talk to us, is ready to ask us what our challenges are, is ready to ask and know what is happening with our drivers, why are they not available, what's going to happen to the vehicles, what's going to happen to the turnaround time, what kind of SLAs should they be signing up with their customers. So I think that's something that has come up. We've recommended it in a big way. And what is also linked to this is obviously all of these kind of activities can only be driven by information technology, which we shall probably cover in later part of our discussion. But the first thing that comes to my mind is collaborative planning and forecasting and replenishment. I think the second point that I would like to mention here is inquiries about IT interventions available in the market. And this aligns with the slide that you had shared with us, that actually what the companies had been able to achieve in about 8 to 10 years, so much ground has been covered in just about 8 to 10 to 12 months. So that's something that is heartening to us as well, because at the core of our consulting, we have information technology. We focus a lot on technology tools to be able to drive inventory management and movement, also e-procurement. I think that's also a space where a lot of people have come back to us and have asked for solutions as to how is it that they can digitize their sourcing process, digitize their procurement process, and that's a welcome sign. And I think the third thing that has come to fore, and which has also been, it's not really been addressed, but it's really being spoken of, I think, and that's about focus on people. Right now, when we are looking at things like collaborative planning, we are looking at concepts like DDMRP, demand-driven, completely demand-driven. We are looking at more accurate forecasts. I think that's when people have started going back, and large and small organizations alike, that they want to go back and they want to see what's really the skill set available to be managed, to be able to manage supply chains. What's the skill set available which is doing all the execution? We all would appreciate that as far as planning aspect is concerned, we are okay. I mean, the CXOs are in place, a lot of planning goes on. But as far as the shop floor level people, the people who are sitting on the systems in the warehouses, the people who are maybe even driving trucks, today our customers are very happy to talk to us about a driver app. That's also, so these three things, I think: collaboration, information technology intervention, and focus on people skills. These are the three things that have become very important and are ways to manage the uncertainties that I've spoken of.
No, no, fantastic. I mean, that's great, right? I think you covered very clearly the three important element, which is also very vital, because ultimately the second point what you mentioned about the inquiries about the IT, I love that part, right? Because people have to step back and see what's happening, where people are doing, how kind of collect and understand, these use cases and successful cases, and from there things will evolve. Fantastic, Captain. This is really helpful. Very informative messages. Thanks a lot. I'll move to Mr. Dinesh. Dinesh, I think you're from Kimberly Clark, so that's very clear. I think I want to touch upon, especially one of the sub theme in our today topic is the IoT and the IOB, right? The recently this terminology of Internet of Behavior has come. The behavior has come because people are now looking at how they can change the entire behavior of their supplier ecosystem and their 3PL ecosystem towards the Internet of doing the business, right? So from your experience, the IoT as well the IOB, right? So how this is evolving now? Are you actually embarking some journey there, which is near term, or we are still far away from there? And just get some kind of a understanding from you, Mr. Dinesh, would be helpful.
Yeah.
To get your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Ganesh. Right. So from an IoT and IOB perspective, right? So what we see is from an industry perspective, we see device proliferation, right? So for example, 2018, it was estimated that there were 7 billion devices, IoT devices. I think today we have about 30 billion devices. These are estimates, right, by various surveys, might be up or down. And we can go as high as 100 billion devices in 2025, right? So what you're seeing here is not only proliferation of devices, but also the data explosion that's happening along with what these devices bring to the table, right? So increased adoption of IoT, and then people are grappling with, it's just not a one stop that you put an IoT device, but then what do you do with the data, right? It's an investment, because there are a lot of minute investments in the IoT ecosystem, and then you really need to connect the dots so that you're able to derive information which is actionable for you. So what I thought I'll do is I'll give you 2 examples about how IoT devices are helping a few industries, right? My past experience and the current one. So one of the things, if you see, is at Walmart, right? They are about $500 billion of sales. And what's surprising for most of you on this call would be is $5 billion of meat is thrown away every year, right? That's $5 billion of meat. So now, what are the reasons for this? The reasons for this is, some of the meat might be past expiry date, Some of the meat might be, when you're transporting them, you're supposed to keep them below 30 degrees centigrade, your cold chain. That doesn't happen, right? So as a company, if you're able to save this $5 billion, it directly hits your bottom line, right? Not even the top line. So increase adoption of IoT devices to be able to track changes in grocery or perishables, right? And then ability to predict which needs to be pushed out sooner. For example, let me give another example of a strawberry. Strawberry is a very perishable commodity in the grocery business, right? The shelf life is very less. If you bought a strawberry, you will have to consume it probably within 3 or 2 days, even after you keep it in the fridge. So most of the strawberries are probably coming into US, manufactured in Mexico or California, and then they have to be transported throughout US. Now, when you're transporting them through this huge transportation network, there'll be variations even within the truck. So for example, in the front of the truck, the temperature could be a little higher. In the middle of the truck, the temperature could be a little lesser, right? And various at places the temperature could be different. So with IoT devices, what retailers actually do is, so if there are, even if there's a 1 degree change in the strawberry temperature, you want to push that strawberry out to the store first, right? So IoT devices are proliferated because they directly give you this business impact, like $5 billion in just for meat. Strawberry, very perishable, right? You need to push out the one that has been exposed to a little, even 1 or 2 degree higher temperature within the cold chain, needs to go out first to the consumer. So what we see is a lot of proliferation of IoT devices, and you have to manage data and information so that you're able to act on it, just not the devices per se. So ability to build intelligent systems on top of the IoT devices so that you're able to serve, right? And for me, listening to all the other panelists, one of the things that really struck me is this: there has never been a great time for a technologist to be in retail, e-commerce, or CPG industry, because now we really have a seat at the table, right? So the CEOs, the CFOs, the chief supply chain officers all come and tell, hey, what is the strategy that we should adopt to have a connected supply chain, for example, right? How is technology going? So technology comes first in all these discussions, right? So having a seat at the table and leading the discussion, I'm happy that after all so many years, that COVID has actually made that to what Subhradeep was alluding to earlier. So now going back to IoT devices, right? So I gave you these two examples of strawberry and meat, where IoT devices really help the bottom line, and also proliferation of devices, not just for the retail segment, right? So even for Kimberly Clark, one of the things that we do is we are a manufacturer of essentials, right? So for example, 1/4 of the global population uses one product daily. So, and during COVID times, we were one of the companies which were positively impacted, right? I'm not very proud of it, but if you see, we do a lot of hygiene products like sanitizers, wipes, etc. And those, they really shot through the roof during the COVID times. So I can kind of correlate to all the earlier discussion, supply disruptions, demand disruptions. We saw a lot of demand coming through the roof. So in fact, we saw 10x demand coming in. So when we were supplying about 20 loads to Amazon, the demand was 200, right? So how do you manage this increased demand? And almost all your customers are asking for more and more supplies. That's one. I don't want to digress into the kind of situation that we landed in. But from an IoT perspective, the other thing that we also see is a lot of folks also spoke about supplier and disruption. So one of the things that we heavily use is pulp, in paper pulp, right? In most of our products. And paper pulp is a very fickle product in terms of, you pay by the amount of moisture that is there in the pulp. So for example, if the moisture is a bit more, you will probably pay the supplier a little less, right? So there's an optimal mix in the commodity. So what we do is we have a lot of devices to measure quality, inbound quality, right? And then to be able to negotiate better with the supplier, do a lot of spend analytics, for example. So that's what I told, right? We have a lot of devices even in the manufacturing floor. So for example, if you are going to cut paper, for example, so a lot of devices which can tell you the blade thickness, for example, and as the blade gets more blunt, right, we can predict when that it's going to make a paper tear, because when the paper is torn, we need to stop the line. And when the line stops to change the paper roll, etc., it's a disruption for us. We lose anywhere between half an hour to 1 hour in doing it. So if you're able to predict things like, when the blade is going to get blunt, when you are able to replace the stuff. So these are like some of the use cases that the IoT devices we have used. And it's very important to be able to derive information out of the device,
Yeah.
because we are being inundated with tons of data, right?
Yeah.
Just give me 1 minute. I'll just charge my headset. It's the wrong time that the battery is dying.
No problem. Maybe I'll switch gear to Mr. Bala and then I'll probably come back to you.
Hear me?
Yeah, we could hear you.
Yeah. So I think those are the kind of stuff, and we see increased adoption of IoT devices primarily because during COVID times, what we see is you want to remove the man in the middle, right? You want to do most of the things automated. So the drive for IoT devices, information technology platforms are coming in from, we know that there might be the next pandemic coming in. There will be workforce disruptions, right? So many of our cases, manufacturing sites, we had to lock down because of local regulations, right? It's unsafe. So how can you, obviate most of these things by automating stuff? So these devices and sensors play a big role, and that's why you can see kind of adoption going through them, and along with it, the associated technologies to make sense out of this data. And
Got
on the internet,
I think we are losing you. Maybe it's happening for everyone, right? Yeah, maybe Dinesh, I think we are losing you. Sorry, we're losing you. Yeah.
Better now.
Yeah, but
okay.
Yeah, maybe I'll switch gears to Mr. Bala, right? I'll probably, we lost him, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. Yes,
So
yes. Yeah,
on
I'll
the
probably switch gears to Mr. Bala, Dinesh. I'll probably come back to you.
Yes.
I mean, very important, very interesting topic, right? So I think, what do we do? I think we'll step back. I think we had a one good round of one discussion. We go to a second round of discussion for next 20 minutes. Probably, I'll ask one question to each one of you, like maybe 3-4 minutes of each. And then we could probably open a discussion for the Q&A as well. So thanks, Dinesh. I think it's very fantastic information on IoT, which is really enthralling. That's been really helpful for the audience, right? So I think let me step back. I'll switch gear to Mr. Bala, right? So I thought to ask a question, especially from the overall network, focusing in the last mile, right? So the last mile network is the physical flow in the last mile is very important, right? So what I want to understand, this is also a question from the audience as well. I had the same question, similar question, but the question is also in a similar direction, right? So what are the digital / or IoT, or it can be like any advanced analytics oriented initiative, right? So what are the things you brought in, especially to meet the challenge of supplying the Ford vehicle to the market? Yes, I mean that's a question to you. One of the audience also asking the similar question. How you managed, and is a traditional legacy system only, or have you done something different in terms of process, different in terms of systems, or any IT interventions or any digital interventions? How this has happened and how it's happening now would be helpful to kind of get to know, Bala.
Yeah, very, very interesting question, Dr. Ganesh.
Yes.
See, what Ford has done even before the COVID hit, we have established a department called data analytics, the global data insights and analytics. Like what Dinesh has indicated, a lot of data-driven decisions where we see opportunity, because any decision we take, we clearly see an opportunity. I think it was a really good, and we were able to predict the forecast right from sales and see how it flows in the supply chain. And it also helped in a lot of our total value management initiative, the cost reduction ideas and all that. Okay, so I can immediately think of that the GDIA was really helping in terms of to reach the vehicle and the last mile, what you mentioned. And also, especially the innovation councils that we have established in Ford, because knowing the way currently what is happening, the traditional is not going to sustain any longer. So the innovation council for each major department, like say manufacturing or for logistics, and the innovation council basically brings lot of partnership conversations. When I say partnership, maybe we are good in manufacturing, but like what is the latest technologies in the market and what is the IT solutions or and maybe even tying up with the universities for doing some of the projects. So it is because we need talent in multifaceted. I don't think the way we are doing business now, it's a single. We really need to get a lot of new ideas in different aspects. So that's another thing immediately comes to my mind. The innovation councils really driving a lot of new ideas. And in terms of the track and traceability, okay, the point is again, it is again, I can say it is not connected with COVID. It is more on how to sustain our current situation with the other challenges, what Subhradeep indicated in his thing, and in terms of semiconductor chip shortage and all that. So how you take care of your track and trace, right, for the inbound as well as your in-plant movements and your outbound logistics, right? So how you ensure that you take care of your track and trace aspects of it. So again, there are a lot of solution providers in the market, and we really want to bring a low cost aspect, because whatever the digital, I fully agree what Subhradeep said, it has to generate value. At the end of the day, whatever you try to bring, not for just sake of introducing digital, end-to-end digital, but if your business is going to go down, there's no value add in that, right? So we see again, we go through a systematic assessments, a clear business case driven decision in implementing any of this, but always we kind of tell our team, try to come up with more and more ideas. And with especially with the millennials now, they know better than the apps and the applications what they have. So we try to encourage them to come up with the ideas, and we see where we can bring more ideas for our business.
Thanks, Dr. Bala. That was really, really insightful. Thanks a lot. I probably switch here to again Subhradeep, right? So one of the question is, even from the audience also, it's coming along in a similar fashion. This two-speed organization, right? You as an organization actually wanted to drive, want to actually do a fantastic digital journey. It can be a the AA journey, whatever you want to do. That is great, right? But we have a network partner ecosystem. Your supplier or your 3PL, your any other partner who actually kind of coming along with your business, right? So what is your viewpoint and what you have seen or what you are suggesting? How do we kind of run this two-speed organization? Because some are legacy, they actually had to move into a very basic ERP system itself. And let's say you as an organization want to run the complete digital. If this is the case, how do you balance it out? Have you come across this? You're seeing this? I think I would love to kind of hear your thoughts, Subhradeep. Yeah.
Sure. I think two-speed organizations are not an end state, definitely, Dr. Ganesh. I think they are the reality as of now, because I think we are seeing organizations caught in transition. It is definitely not a desirable end state, and it's a very tricky balance to maintain. And probably the upside is not particularly high, as we are discussing, you are finding there are so many disparate variables to deal with anyway. And why do you want to add one more to it and say, I will have two completely different kind of vantage points there? I think there is this interesting example, right? When Dinesh was talking, I was reminded of briefly in the early days of the pandemic, there was this big thing around supermarkets running out of toilet paper. World over, I think in India, we are not heavy users of it, so we were immune to it. But world over, I think people were running out of toilet paper. And much later, when people started identifying, one of the challenges was that the demand pattern had shifted. Because all of a sudden, travel had been impacted. Hotels and others who are typically bulk buyers of a particular grade of toilet paper, were no longer, buying it at that moment. And a lot of the demand was coming from residential who use softer multiply, paper, for which you need to shift production lines. Now, this is normal demand-led issue. Imagine that with in a legacy setting, in a two-speed, kind of an organization. It's an unnecessary, difficulty which we are taking on. I think this is also where I would probably highlight a couple of examples where industries which are not known for speed have demonstrated speed. I gave you one of the examples of a US retailer who did something which they themselves had planned for 18 months in 2 days, of being able to, install curbside pickup and get it activated for most of their stores. But even telecom, there are examples of large telecom customers, and one of them were able to, in 3 weeks, pretty much reskill about a couple of thousands of their, sales workforce, and be able to redeploy them completely within that entire setting. So it is doable, and I don't think lack of time should be the reason for an organization to kind of be have their feet on both different boats. So that is definitely not desirable. There are two distinct polarities which I wanted to talk about. One is this whole business of diversification, which is a business need. But we are also now seeing that there is a need on one hand to diversify your supply base because you want to, manage geopolitical and other risks and so on. But that also comes at a cost. And you are probably better off with what Captain Jatin was talking about, the collaborative planning. I think it's a pretty critical point. And lack of that may not be a strategy issue. Lack of that may be just a need issue. If you have zeroed in on 2 or 3 suppliers, then there's only so much collaboration you will have with anyone else other than those 1 or 2 suppliers. So so that's one polarity, and how you fine tune that. How much do you diversify? How much do you not? What are you exactly solving for? There's a price you pay for insourcing. There's a price you pay for potentially even bringing it into closer geographically or time zone wise or whatever be the case, which may come in that respect. The other polarity is the trade-off between variety and capacity. Capacity is easily understood. We have been talking about safety stock, inventory, what you are holding and so on and so forth. But also just look at the variety aspect of it. And the biggest examples there are retail. The sheer proliferation in SKUs that happens, at the time from a marketing perspective is a great thing. Because the more product variety you have, the more segments you can capture. And so from a marketing tourism perspective, as in we would probably, as a marketer, I would be the first one to say, hey, if you can, by all means, have 3 different price points, 3 different product areas, which target 3 different segments of the market. But it's a complete pain on your production system and on your supply chain. And in moments of stress, like what we went through and what may still be coming, it completely scuppers you because you have no ability to now suddenly kind of flex between those, and you are desperately caught between which of those SKUs are you going to be pulling together. So I think those two will be pretty critical. Both Adi and Dinesh talked about data, very, very critical. The data is playing an extremely critical role, both in terms of predictive analytics as well as the core insights that they are bringing in. There are tons of good examples which are coming in. There is, in fact, a good question to be asked as to which elements of your supply chain can you make entirely data-driven and reduce a little bit of human intervention, because at times human intervention will be unable to comprehend some of the problems which data at times may be able to call out. And there may be an opportunity for an industry, entire industry or a category to probably look at that and manage that. And coming back to, I think this is where the 2-speed organization will be at a massive disadvantage. I think you can't have data for 2 different parts of the organization. So I think it's a necessary situation where probably organizations find themselves, and the graph you showed in the beginning of this conversation was telling. Almost every industry, including the likes of entertainment, social media, who are typically technology savvy, are still at a kind of a half and half zone, which is itself is a problem, and it highlights the amount of ground we need to cover in order to kind of get there. See, I would close by saying the biggest factor which I think the pandemic has taught all of us world over is resilience, and resilience of our supply chains and resilience of our businesses. So if you have to manage resilience, there is an element of, which is why I'm using the word polarity. I'm not saying it's a choice. You will have to manage some diversity, but I think there is less is more, I would say. There are some of those truisms in both marketing and production truisms, which I think we'll have to confront and see as to whether or not they're useful anymore. in the current context, be it proliferation, of SKUs, or be it the over specialization we have in supply chain partners.
Right. No, I think fantastic. Thanks for the very, very wonderful thoughts. I think with the similar area, right? I just want to move to Captain Jatin, right? So, so we talked about, in terms of the overall IoT, the overall technology, and what are the challenges, and Subra mentioned about in terms of the journey. You actually also mentioned about the three things is required, right? So now we are talking something as intelligent supply chain, right? So if you have to give a very brief definition of intelligent supply chain, this is something like we have a very, very conventional business setup which actually leveraging some of the intelligent technology, right? I mean if you read by a academic the bookish definition, if I actually leverage the intelligent technology, then my supply chain can be an intelligent supply chain. That is one school of thought. And there will be another school of thought where nothing, it's about the intelligent process, right? I can go and actually put down the right process on the table, intelligent process on the table, then become an intelligent supply chain, right? So there are different schools of thought in this particular intelligent supply chain per se, right? The question to you, what you have seen your clients, what they have done, if at all they want to move to intelligent supply chain, what they have done and how they moved in that journey. What are the challenges you've seen, right? And maybe your definition of intelligent supply chain also would be helpful. Would love to hear from you, Captain.
Great, thank you. So I think I would like to give my version of an intelligent supply chain. To my mind, obviously, it's a combination of what you said. It's about processes, it's about information technology. I think a very important aspect that I would like to associate with it is its ability to be responsive. And while I say responsive, I think all the actions, all the words such as agile, such as flexible, and all of those things should get combined as responsive. And I think it becomes only responsive when it's intelligent. And that intelligence, as we all would agree, is based on data. So that's how I think we link all of those things together and bring out an intelligent supply chain. Having said that, I think there are, Dr. Ganesh, three things at the top of my mind that I think can make intelligent supply chains possible in India. And we've spoken of processes. And here I'd like to mention business process reengineering. I'd also like to bring in a little bit of military thought processes in this. And see, typically, whenever we are looking at resolving a problem, we always try to look at it in terms of what's the base, what's the foundation. That's how militaries work. I'd also like to mention here, and it's an anecdote that, a lot of my friends, they used to ask me that while you're posted in a peace location, you're not fighting a war. What are you really doing? I mean, what's happening with taxpayers' money? I said, look, when we are not fighting wars, we are simulating wars, right? So there is not 1 minute spent by the defense resources that are available to a country. Either they're in it or they're preparing for it, right? So that's very important. And if we are preparing for it, the only thing that we are doing is going back to basics, I think, and I can't say it enough. And it has happened with one of our customers, which came to us saying that, listen, we have the budget, just bring in some inventory visibility. We want to know what inventory is lying in place A, what inventory is lying in place B. We want to be able to track our vehicles. We want an EPOD. But it would not have happened unless we got back, looked at their processes, did a business process flow, did business process reengineering, best practice, intervention. Unless we do that, you see, small organization or large, I believe that intelligent supply chains is always going to be a bit of a challenge. The second point that I see, and I think it's extremely relevant, and I sometimes wonder why it has not happened. One is that there has to be intra-firm integration. And then there has to be inter-firm integration. You see, again, bringing in military context, we are at 1.3 million strong organization. Our assets are spread across the Indian subcontinent and obviously in international locations as well. And as you would believe, we've mostly been a paper-driven organization, right? But it can never be that we do not know what is being held by an Indian contingent in a UN peacekeeping location in Congo. Right? It's getting updated real time. And a lot of it is being done on pen and paper and only safe electronic medium because it can't be in the public space. So when an organization has been doing it for so many years, why is it that corporate India, why is it that large organizations, why is it that our suppliers, manufacturers, why can't we open them up to inter-firm integration? And Dr. Ganesh, today is a time when we are looking at, I mean, we are a small organization. Since we do a little bit of technology related work, we are ISO 27000 compliant, right? We are GDPR compliant, right? A small organization like ourselves. So, and I believe that the moment we open up, the moment we lose this hesitation between integration of, let's say, an SAP with a small WMS TMS of a service provider, the moment we come out of that roadblock, that bottleneck, things will open up, and that's when we'll be able to really implement intelligent supply chains. Otherwise, you know what it's going to be? It's always going to be about large organization, large service providers. The moment you do that integration, then cost goes for a toss. Right? We, as in India, I think are always going to be dependent on smaller organizations to give us localized service. That's something that we all, I think there is a consensus on that. And in the same breath, I'd like to also say that I think there needs to be some push with small and medium enterprises because they're very, very capable. We cannot do without them. And if we can take them to the next level, give them some real IT solutions, give some business process re-engineering, they can really become the backbone of the larger organization. And this I'm saying tier 1, tier 2, we've had focus on. It's time to look at the nth tier. Right? It might take costs up. I understand it's going to be cumbersome, but look, pain, they always say in the army that you sweat in peace to save blood in war. Right? If we are able to do that, I think that. And the third thing I've said about this before, I think it's going to be a lot about people development, skill development. We in the army, have a concept called continuous training with objectives, and it's a training program which is done in every unit every Monday for 1 hour. Right? It's very simple. But it somehow, because of our, today there's annual closing, tomorrow there are targets, so on and so forth, things are there. I understand from a corporate perspective, but since I've been here now for almost 15 years in corporate India, I think that's also something we need to push. So all of these three things put together can only take us on the path of intelligent supply chains. Otherwise, I think it's a task that it's a hurdle that we will uncover, but it will take longer.
Fantastic. I think fix the nuts and bolts of basic hygiene. That's where we have to start the journey. That's what you're saying. I think it's very, very, very important, right? Because I've seen many of the client, right? So they want to do a digital journey, and the new DNA is the new DNA, right? The digital analytics become a new DNA, right? So DNA, they call this a new DNA, right? So, and they want to transform into a digital, they want to transform into advanced analytics, but without fixing the basic process, without fixing the basics in terms of the transaction systems, right? So I think you said it very rightly, right? And fix the basics process, have a nut and bolt of hygiene, then I think move to a next level. And as rightly mentioned, today I think I know it's not about everything on technology. As you rightly mentioned, Web3 is doing it, and now it's happening now. I think that's where the discipline and the talent, the nurturing the talent is also important. Those are some of the vital points you covered, Captain. Thanks a lot, right?
Dr. Ganesh, one small anecdote, I'll take 5 seconds. This customer that I was speaking to you about that wanted a complete digital journey, and we said that look at business process, small example. I said that if you want to get into some kind of planning at your plant, you need to start having an ASN. Right? Just a simple ASN. And I had to fight tooth and nail to convince them that ASN is important and needs to be implemented. You see, that's the hurdle we need to overcome.
No, fantastic. See, today I think the advanced shipment notice as an overall concept may not be there in some of the ERP system, but I think that's where, as you rightly mentioned, I've seen one of the client, they've done a separate small BI connected to their current ERP system. I think that's where, see, it is not about I need to go for a next best-in-class advanced supply chain system. It is about whatever the basic ERP system what you have, you can use a small BI systems to connect that small module. That is also possible. And it is about the will and wish. I mean, see, it's about skill, will, and ability. As you rightly said, first of all, have the willingness, then bring the ability, and then automatically the skill can be developed. So rightly said, Captain Jatin. Thanks a lot. I think we'll have one more questions to Dinesh. After that, we probably have a Q&A. I think to the participants, we'll have another 10 more minutes, right? So I'm going to ask one question to Dinesh, and after that, we open for any Q&A. If you have any specific questions, please use the chat platform so I can actually ask from there. Dinesh, I want to ask one of the very important question to you, right? So the advanced analytics. Let me give some background, right? So today I was reading one of the recent report, right? The supply chain analytics market, right? If we talk about the market, that market is around $2 billion today, right? And 20% it grow annually. So in 2025, it become a $5 billion supply chain analytics market. I mean, that's a huge market. I mean, it is about combination of software and hardware. Maybe 2/3 come from a software and maybe 1/3 come from a services. It's a combination of both, right? So now this market is evolving and is going in a rapid manner, right? So the AA, we call it as a advanced analytics. I mean, put in a simple, people actually talk about descriptive analytics, the basic analytics, and after that the predictive, and then people are actually talking about the prescriptive. These are the three journey which you're talking, right? So the question to you, given this context, right, the question to you is the AA part, the advanced analytics part. Um, in your journey, in your company, I think this is also a suggestion to someone else who really wanted to embark the journey, right? If this is one or two area you can do a minimum viable product, and we call it as MVP, right? It's a minimum viable product. So hey, I tried this and I've seen this people trying it. Maybe it is in your current planning context, or it may be in your current ecosystem context. Maybe a supplier, let's say a predictive analytics for a supplier when you get failure, when the delivery get failure. I mean, this is an example, right? So likewise, one or two example from your experience where you have seen yourself and you actually seen it's working out well. So it's actually worth trying as a MEP for others to think through as the next journey. So the AA element wanted to cover from your side, Dinesh.
Yeah, so great question, right? And I think there are a number of opportunities in the supply chain, right? Because of so many problems that can come in. One of the things that you need to do, see, and AI, there's a lot of buzzword, right? The industry is through a hype cycle on AI. So, but once the hype cycle, so one thing that you rightly told is we need to have a very clear problem statement, an MVP, a minimum viable product. Don't think too big because the chance of a failure is too high. So start small, build some confidence because you have to build the talent in the team. Also, the business needs to be able to consume what is being predicted, because they have tons of experience from their earlier all the stints, right? And for an AI engine to come in and kick in and tell, look, you are doing this wrong, and so so it's also a lot of change management before you implement AI solution. Now, coming back to your question on some of the MVPs we have tried and which are, we purposefully kept the scope small in the beginning so that the business gets a hang of what they're getting, right? And then slowly you expand the scope so that even the business understands technology and their change management becomes easier. And then we connect systems one by one. So one of the things that we did very simple is see, in the US, what happens is we bid for lanes or freight, right? So we bid for them. A lot of freight carriers will bid for it. And then, what happens is suddenly, if they have bid for, like, let's say from Chicago to Texas, like Austin, for example, 5 lanes in a month, what might happen is they might only carry 4 loads and the 5th one they'll drop. They promise they will take 5, but they take only 4. So what happens is when they do this, it disrupts my planning, right? I've already planned for 5 with them. And then I need to go to the spot market. Spot market is like instant, right? I need to pay more because this is like, I'm hungry. I want it right now, right? So these are like small use cases where, AI can come in and tell, hey, look, based on weather patterns, based on previous freight carrier details or demand in the market, right? Because it might not be our demand or freight. The overall demand for freight might have gone up, and that's why the freight carrier is, not able to honor your commitments. So these are somewhere where technology can come in and predict that, look, this freight carrier is probably going to drop it, right? And you'll have to pay more. So you're better off probably giving that load to someone else even before that thing happened. right? So I just give you one use case of how AI can come in. But it's a journey, right? It's not like people think AI is a hype, right? Everybody wants to do AI. But when the decision is given, how easily the business will trust it, right? And adopt it. I think there has to be a robust change management process. It's just not about technology. Technology can do a lot of wonderful stuff, but then you're going against experience, someone who has experience for 20, 25 years in the job, right? And then, and for you to trust somebody, a machine's intelligence is going to take some change management.
No, fantastic. No, super. Thanks, Dinesh. This is really helpful, right? We lost him, I think, right?
No, I think he's there. I think the
Is there?
video
Oh,
has
The
frozen.
video is
yeah.
gone. Yeah.
Video
Oh,
is off, yeah.
got it. Okay. Thanks, Dinesh. Thanks. You're saying something, Dinesh? Not.
No, I'm done,
No.
Ganesh.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks. Okay. Thanks, Dinesh. This was really helpful. I know we're almost like close to next 2-3 minutes.
Yeah.
I think any specific, any specific comments or question from audience? I had one question quickly to Dr. Bala, right? So I probably want to get your guidance, Bala,
Yeah.
right? So the question is, with the recent shortage of semiconductors, which the auto industry has faced, how does Ford overcome this challenge, and does digital or any other initiative plays any role from mainly from a semiconductor point of view because of the shortage of that, right? So
Yeah.
um,
Just a couple of thoughts, Dr. Ganesh. See, we are going through a journey called, like I said, visibility is one of the key challenge. We have kind of establishing a tier X project, it means it's beyond tier 1, how we can improve the visibility. It is in the process of data collection mode. And now our thought process is to develop a kind of a dashboard and see how we can make use of the dashboard to fix this type of issue. That is one level of journey, and the other one is the resilience portion. What Subhradeep said. See, resilience, like you want to balance inventory versus the freight, right? So I mean, if you have, you can carry a little bit more inventory, but your overall transportation cost will shoot up if you want to get something. So you try to allocate right semiconductor for the high profit margin products, so that you can make use of that and try to preserve some inventory. So that is another effort. Again, that needs with the data. So the backbone is data, like where you need to start storing the inventory and all that. So these are all some of the initiatives that we have started. We have to go for a long way, I can say. I mean, immediately, if you ask me, there is a digital, you can switch on the button and see something. We are not there yet. We have to start working with our partners, with our suppliers, and then develop that robust model so that going forward, we can start predicting and we can handle this situation when something new arises. That's the current plan. That's how we currently manage in Ford.
thanks, Dr. Bala. That was really helpful. There was no other questions from the audience, but I think it was a wonderful discussions. You know, I think we thought to have one more round of discussion, but I think I always see the paucity of time. I think it's actually great discussion in the last 1 hour 20 minutes, right? So it's been a fantastic examples, the real the real journey, what you actually come across, what your client come across, you shared. I think it's a very really informative session in the last. I mean, for me also, it's a great learning, right? So I think having said this, I think the LinkedIn is a platform. Definitely, the participants can reach out and be connected with the people. I just probably take only last 20 seconds to kind of give a one perspective answer from my side, right? So last 20 seconds. So I talked about the digital challenges, right? So what we are doing is what we are actually indicating to our clients: transform in 4 key ways, right? So I mean, obviously you have to recover as a digital. One is refocus your efforts, especially wherever you want to do for the changing expectations, right? So that is one important. So ensure your investment aligned to the customer behavior and customer expectation reality. Don't do just for going for digital. That is one important element. And use new data and AI to improve the business operations. That means you kind of upgrade, and it is not about the old data, the old setup of data. Try to kind of upgrade your decision support or expert systems to create a the sheer operational responsiveness. That's where I think we would actually say use new data. That's where I think bring the right system to bring the new data, and the power of AI would be much more better than the old data, because the way you capture the way you capture might not be right. So the third element, selectively modernize the technology capability. It's not about I'm going to modernize everywhere, I'm going to bring technology everywhere. So selectively do the acceleration and decide your digital journey. The last one is increase the organizational drumbeat. It is about the new org model. So increase the velocity. I think somebody else in the panel mentioned about the velocity, right? So that increase the velocity and productivity of the organization. That's what I think we would say. If we do that, we can see the benefit, right? 20% sale can improve, the cost can reduce in the overall setup. Lot of benefits actually can come on the table. So with that, I want to kind of close our session. Thanks to the panel, thanks to CII for bringing this fantastic session on the table. It's been a great discussion so far in the last 1.5 hours. Any thoughts, panelists, quickly?
I think thanks, Dr. Ganesh, and thanks to CII, thanks to fellow panelists. And it's a wonderful session. I really learned a lot. I'm looking forward to start interacting more with you to get the diversified learning to improve our business. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, CII. Thank you, Dr. Ganesh. Fantastic job of, managing this such a vast topic. And I really love the, panelists. I think your perspectives, I learned a lot. I was making notes, as much as one could in this. So definitely look forward to connecting over LinkedIn or elsewhere as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you,
it's
Dr.
been,
Ganesh. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, CII. Thank you for this opportunity. It's always a pleasure to come and share thoughts. And I think the panel was amazing. It was really engaging and very nicely conducted seminar. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. I know there's always diversity in thought. There was diversity in this panel. So good learning. And I think I personally enjoyed this discussion a lot. So thank you, Ganesh.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks a lot. All the very best, and thanks for the great discussions. Okay.
Thank you.
I think
Thank
some
you.
more sessions to go for participants. Have a great conference. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank